gun rights supporters look to keep racking up the wins in Colorado. We learned where election denier Tina Peters got $250,000 for her recount. Most of it's not from Colorado. Denver's bike superhighway has a missing chunk. We learned the history that explains why. Her life is nearing its end, but not before her wedding.
Everybody gets lonely sometimes, and it's nice to have a good friend.
And the Colorado Rockies did something no other team in baseball did today. They did nothing. Jack squat. From Rockies fans to Tina Peters donors, ways that people waste their money. Coming up on Next. Colorado's most extreme gun rights group is looking to keep up its momentum lately with another win as they try to temporarily stop enforcement of Colorado's large capacity magazine ban, nearly a decade after that gun control became law. The legal arm of the far-right group Rocky Mountain Gun Owners wants the law off the books entirely. We've reported over the years on how gun shops have found some ways around that law that bans magazines that hold more than 15 rounds. RMGO's legal arm filed a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction on this. The group previously challenged the ban in state court but lost. Last week, they filed a lawsuit in federal court, hoping that a recent Supreme Court decision against a gun law in New York might help dismantle Colorado's law. RMGO has been pretty busy since the Supreme Court decision signaled a more conservative direction on gun rights. They're also challenging Superior's new gun laws, which ban so-called assault weapons. A judge granted a temporary restraining order against Superior's law. $250,000 is on fire in Colorado right now. It's being burned in a pointless recount by election denier Tina Peters and her supporters. It's a recount that will confirm that she lost the Republican primary for Secretary of State by about 88,000 votes. It's their money, so I suppose it's their business. But since it's our election system they're trying to undermine, and because campaign finance disclosures are public, it is now everyone's business exactly who came up with that $256,000 to pay for the recount. Hint, a lot of them don't live in Colorado. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
So tomorrow I need to raise $236,000 to do a statewide recount.
After making this plea on Steve Bannon's webcast on July 25th, Republican Tina Peters received more than 3,800 contributions to her Secretary of State campaign account. She lost that campaign to be the Republican nominee for Secretary of State by 88,000 votes, but she wanted a recount, which is underway because she paid the $255,000 it will cost all the counties to do what you're seeing, pay staff time to recount the election. And she paid for it with other people's money.
It couldn't be one guy. Mike Lindell couldn't come in and write a $150,000 check. Had to be small donations.
No, he couldn't, and did not give a dime, apparently. Lindell's name does not appear on the list of donors that gave her $516,000 leading up to and after her primary loss. Before she lost, she only raised $216,000.
I have never heard of a candidate who raised more money after they lost than they did during the entire campaign.
Mario Nicholas, a campaign finance attorney, said it was absolutely shocking. Peters raised nearly 2.5 times as much money for her campaign after her campaign lost.
It's just an odd world where they're more interested in actually fighting elections after they've already been lost. Maybe it's just the Trump hangover has been so strong that's what people are most interested in now.
With the help of investigative producer Zach Newman, you can see the contributions spike after her appearance on Bannon's show. Of the $516,000 she got in the last month, 72% of it came from out of state. California had the most people contribute, $516. Texas residents gave the most, $42,000. The other states with the most contributors, Florida, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York. She raised more money than the recount cost, and I know I've received some emails. What happens to the rest? Well, it cannot be used by Peters personally, like for her defense of felony charges in Mesa County for tampering with her election equipment. She could use it for a future political campaign. She could give it back to the donors. She could give it to a legitimate charity. And I can't believe I said that first thing.
So you called up some of the people out of state that gave her like significant money to be like, dude, do you know what's going on here?
The maximum you can give in the election for this race is $1,250.
Yeah.
So I called a few. One was in Paul in Massachusetts, and he said, I saw it on the War Room, July 25th. I gave, and then he started telling me how the machines are plugged into the internet.
Yep.
When I said they're not, he said they are. How do I know? Well, because I'm here, I've done stories on this, I've seen the machines. Paul, how do you know they're plugged into the internet from Massachusetts? Because she told him.
And that is how you separate people from their money. And it's amazing to watch it happen. All right, Marshall, thank you. So the recount is currently being watched by Democratic and Republican observers. Republicans in Denver came out today to say that they have finished the count there. And Tina Peters did not gain a single new vote in Denver. Pam Anderson, who won the Secretary of State primary, picked up 4 additional votes in the recount. So with that statewide recount on pace to finish by Thursday, Tina Peters is now about 88,004 votes behind. The city of Denver's plan to fix sidewalks is not working. City auditor called it ineffective and inequitable. This November, voters in Denver will have another choice on how to pay for sidewalk repairs. Denver Election says it has not received enough signatures to put the Denver Deserves Sidewalks initiative on the ballot. So currently, business and homeowners are responsible for sidewalk repairs out in front of their place. If this measure passes, repairs would be publicly funded by all city property owners. People would pay a fee each year, and it would go into a big pot. Supporters say that would typically be about $100 a year for a single-family home. Denver's bike shares are seeing more riders these days, so more riders are likely seeing an oddity in the city's bike superhighway, the Cherry Creek Trail. Imagine if you had an interstate with one chunk of it quite different and less convenient than the rest. Our Steve Stager tracked down the Coloradan who laid out the bike path.
It's safer. You're removed completely from traffic.
There's not much like it when it comes to bike infrastructure.
It is more natural environment.
The Cherry Creek Trail kind of rocks. But there's part of the trail where things get weird. Right as you approach Downing, you'll notice the Cherry Creek Trail becomes the trail. And all of a sudden, you're riding along First Avenue next to a brick wall.
I think most people hit that dead end and think, oh, this is really unfortunate, but don't realize that the creek continues.
Denver Post columnist Megan Schrader tweeted about that strange situation the other day. The spot where the creek continues into Denver Country Club and cyclists and joggers are forced to get all cozy with car traffic on First Avenue.
It's uncomfortable. It just removes you immediately from the trail setting to an urban sidewalk setting.
Trying to figure out everything that cyclists are going to need.
Fred Wolf designed the Cherry Creek Trail as a planner for the city of Denver back in the 70s.
Literally this year, it was 50 years ago that I did the Denver Bikeway Plan.
Wolf says the country club, which existed long before the bike path, was an obstacle, one he decided to avoid.
We'd have to cut the fence, which would be a security problem for the Denver Country Club.
Schrader wonders if it's time for the city to look into completing the path along the river, at least part of the way into the country club property.
And I don't want to be unreasonable. The Denver Country Club, for those who are members of this private organization, is probably really, really nice, right? But I think that surely we can meet some kind of a compromise that is better than what we have currently.
Wolf says that would be a tough sell.
Sure, from an ideal standpoint, that's true, but from a practical standpoint, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I left a message for the Denver Country Club today, just wondering what they thought of this idea. Haven't heard back yet. Wolf says in order to make that path a reality, you would have to fence in the creek, which aesthetically wouldn't look great on a golf course, especially one as pretty as that one. By the way, this story is fascinating of how he conceptualized the creek. We put our full interview with Fred Wolf on 9news.com.
I suppose the city could just like eminent domain a little slice of the country club.
But think about the members of the Denver Country Club. I bet you there are some lawyers in there who are thinking,
yeah.
That
would be political suicide to try and eminent domain the Denver Country Club. Tell you what, you get a fat stack of dollar bills dropped against you in your next race. All right. Thank you, Steve. Oil and gas developments threatening some of Colorado's best-known historic sites. That is from a new report looking at the impact of oil and gas on places like Mesa Verde National Park and Dinosaur National Monument. The report from the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks and Archaeology Southwest says both Mesa Verde and Dinosaur National Monument have long been threatened by oil and gas drilling. The report says there are now tens of thousands of oil and gas wells on land around Dinosaur National Monument, and there are some on the monument's land itself. The group is concerned that all of that oil and gas work over time is essentially going to turn what were sacred spaces into industrial zones with a threatened water supply, changed scenic views, and the oil and gas might light up otherwise dark night skies.
This threatens the irreplaceable resources protected within the boundaries. Because of the way our laws are set up, we could have oil and gas wells placed literally on the doorstep of these irreplaceable places. It's never been about saying oil and gas should go away. It's been about finding that balanced path between responsible oil and gas development, but protecting places that are important to all Americans, particularly to Native communities, Indigenous communities.
The report includes this map showing the boundaries for Mesa Verde, you see it down in the bottom circled in blue, and Dinosaur National Monument up top center circled in blue. The land in red around it is land that is currently under oil and gas leases. The report calls on the Biden administration to protect additional land from oil and gas leasing and to add further setbacks around national parks and monuments. What do you say we get some decent COVID news? Colorado, our state's positivity rate has not been this low since late May. 9.8% of official tests have come back positive over the last week. That, of course, does not count at-home tests. You figure a lot of people test positive at home, they go to get an official confirmatory test. Monday was the first time that we dropped below 10% positivity since May 25th. We're definitely seeing progress in that regard. Of course, got to remind you, public health experts prefer to see positivity below 5%. That tells them the virus is in check within the community. We haven't been below 5% since April 20th.
Her health is failing. The love of her life is far away. Yet, she has joy.
He asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
Denver's getting rid of some of its trash cans downtown. The city explains why. The most Colorado Rockies thing we saw today is sitting one game out of last and doing bupkis as every other team makes moves at the trade deadline. Never change, Rockies. Never change.
One of Colorado's most recent marriages is a bride and groom who have been friends for decades. Their health and their distance have kept them apart. Both are now in hospice care, the bride in Colorado, the groom in Vermont. So the moment had to be virtual, yet it was still very real. The bride and her sister shared the couple's love story.
Tom is wonderful, and we went to see Godspell together when we were in grade school. Hi, my name is Dana Haley, and I live here at Cambridge Care Center. He had MS, and I thought I needed support, so I called him, and it just happened. He asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
One day she called me up and she said, Tom asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I'm Allison Short, and I'm Dana Haley's sister and her best friend. Dana's needed some help over the years. She was stricken with kidney failure and some other things, and so I've always been here along with my brother Brett.
We're gathered together.
We decided we could do a virtual wedding. It was right here at Cambridge, right here in the courtyard here, and Tom had his at the nursing home where he is in Vermont.
It was wonderful. It was here in the courtyard, and I had such a good time.
It was very touching. I think I choked up on my my toast to her.
We had cake, we had a priest, we had everybody there, and it was really nice to have my sister orchestrate the whole thing.
You have your beautiful wedding ring. We have a lot of fun together, and I just love her so much.
Everybody gets lonely sometimes, and it's nice to have a good friend.
It can get very lonely in a nursing home, and to have a friend like that they talk every single day for years, it's great. It just brings hope and optimism, I think, to people that have many challenges in life. Let love come through, and you never know what'll happen.
Be together. Have a good time. Love one another.
Dana and her sister spoke with our photojournalist Byron Reed. Wish Dana and Tom all the best.
Denver's trying to deal with a trashy situation downtown. And the most Colorado Rockies thing we saw today was being content with mediocrity, as long as fans continue to get suckered into buying tickets. Next.
Surprise, surprise, another hot day, another 90-degree day, 2 out of 2 for the month of August, and that takes our total to 40 days so far this summer season with that 90-degree heat. We touched 97 out of DIA, some triple digits across the eastern plains into Nebraska as well as Kansas too. 70s and 80s up into the mountains, a little bit more manageable, and we still are tracking those thunderstorms tonight. As we zoom in here to the Front Range, they've been few and far between across the urban corridor, primarily up toward Larimer County, a few just to the west of Colorado Springs. But get this, some good news. A little cold front on the way. It slides through Colorado overnight into early tomorrow morning. That's going to drop our temperatures just a bit. So tomorrow will feature some cooler weather. And by cooler, I mean just slightly cooler. Lower 90s on deck for us. Storms are going to be winding down overnight. Tomorrow morning, we kick off the day with that sunshine as the cold front moves through. Storms will be a bit more powerful to the southward, the Palmer Divide, Colorado Springs, and south across I-25. Again, isolated here in the metro area. Highs returning to the lower 90s. We'll take the brief break, right? Because the heat, it's back on as we look ahead toward Friday, close to 100 degrees with a better chance of storms and cooler temperatures this weekend.
Our next question tonight comes from DJ. In the last 4 months, DJ's noticed trash cans disappearing from street corners downtown. And DJ wanted to know, is the city trying to make it harder to keep downtown clean?
Excellent question, DJ. The city told us today they are not trying to make it harder to clean up downtown.
And we also wanted to be environmentally conscious. Think about the gas deployed for the trash being picked up, the amount of labor that's employed, things like that. So we wanted to make for a more efficient program. We're in the process of doing this right now.
So here's what's happening. The city's removing some trash cans downtown to replace them with 180 so-called smart tech receptacles. These are trash cans that have sensors in them that tell the city how full they are. So then that way they don't have to go around and try to empty a bunch of nearly empty cans on necessary trips. Apparently, the trash cans in Lodo have already been swapped out, but other parts of the project were delayed because of events downtown, like the Stanley Cup Parade. If you see something and you're curious about it, ask. Guessing somebody else asked the same question. Send questions by email to next@9news.com. I said earlier that the Rockies are comfortable with mediocrity, and I should apologize for that. I looked up the definition of mediocrity, and the Rockies are actually worse than that. We'll have some thoughts on the ball club and your feedback next. The most Colorado Rockies thing we saw today is complacently sitting near the bottom of the standings while every other team in baseball tried to improve today. Every team in baseball made some kind of a trade ahead of today's trade deadline except your Colorado Rockies. Game out of last in the NL West, and they are content to sit there and collect your money, so long as fans are still willing to come and watch the visiting teams visit one of the best ballparks in the league, Love Coors, and rack up wins against the home team. Tina sends this message saying it's not actually true what I said that the Rockies did bupkis today. She notes that they put Chris Bryant on the IL for the 3rd time this season. That is true. Poor guy. He's going to be sitting around probably watching a lot of Rockies baseball. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Andrea says, what is the cost to taxpayers for the Tina Peters recount? No cost to taxpayers. She had to come up with the cash. As Marshall showed us, a lot of out-of-state folks who parted with their money based on misinformation. See you next time.